Alex had always thought living with an alien roommate would be strange. After all, Earth and the galaxy had only recently started sharing space stations. But when he was assigned to live with Naira, a peaceful alien from a distant planet, things weren't as strange as he expected. She was quiet, respectful, and curious about everything human. Naira didn't have much interest in human culture, but she always asked questions, especially about Earth's military. It had been a few months since Alex and Naira moved in together, and they had settled into a routine. Alex would leave for his training and missions, and Naira would spend her time exploring the station. She had a knack for learning about Earth's technology and culture, often coming back with stories of what she'd learned from the other humans on the station. She had a soft, gentle nature, always eager to learn more, but also distant in her own way. The two didn't talk much except when necessary. Alex was often preoccupied with his military duties. Naira, on the other hand, was busy trying to understand humans in her own way. He never thought much of their dynamic. They were just roommates. One evening, Alex returned to their shared quarters after a long day of training. He tossed his combat gear onto the chair near the door and kicked off his boots. It was another exhausting day, filled with drills and exercises. He was about to sit down and relax when he noticed Naira standing near his gear. She was staring at the combat suit with an expression Alex couldn't quite read. "Hey, Naira," Alex said, taking off his jacket. "I didn't think you'd be interested in my gear." Naira turned to face him, a slight blush on her pale green cheeks. "I was just curious," she replied softly. "I've never seen something like this before." She was standing very close to the armor, her fingers almost grazing the surface. Alex couldn't help but notice how fascinated she seemed by it. He had never seen her so focused on something that wasn't related to her studies or human behavior. "What do you think?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Naira looked at him for a moment, almost hesitantly. "It's impressive," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It looks like it's made for protection. But it's more than that, isn't it?" Alex smiled. "Yeah, it's for combat. It's designed to keep me alive in battle." She stepped closer, her hand now gently hovering over the helmet. "You fight ... to protect others?" Naira asked, her voice quieter now, almost as if she was unsure how to phrase it. Alex shrugged. "That's the idea. I don't really think about it much when I'm in the field. I just do what needs to be done." Naira's eyes stayed on the armor. She took a slow breath, as if considering something deeply. "Humans are strange," she said softly, almost to herself. Alex chuckled. "You're telling me?" Naira didn't respond. Instead, her fingers brushed the helmet gently, as though testing the weight of it with a single touch. Alex felt a strange moment of silence hang between them, a kind of understanding Gondar's. She finally said softly, "I just never realized how much you carry with you." Alex was taken aback. He had never thought of it that way before. The gear wasn't just protection. It was a part of him, a part of who he was as a soldier. But it also represented everything he had to face in battle. The fear, the loss, the constant need to fight. "Anyway," he said, changing the subject. "What did you learn today? It's more about human history?" Naira blinked, her gaze shifting to Alex with a sudden intensity. She smiled, but there was something different in her eyes, now something Alex couldn't quite place. "I did," she replied, her voice lighter now. "I learned a lot." Alex didn't understand what she meant, but as Naira turned away and walked toward the small library in the corner of the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. He wasn't sure what it was, but it made him uneasy. For the first time, he noticed how closely she was paying attention to him. Something about her had shifted. Maybe it was the way she had touched his combat gear, or maybe it was something deeper. Alex wasn't sure, but whatever it was something he couldn't ignore. As Naira settled into her corner of the room, Alex sat on his bed, still unsure of what had just happened. The silence between them felt heavier now, charged with something new, something unspoken. Alex couldn't help but wonder what this new feeling meant for them both. The next morning, Alex woke up to the sound of Naira humming softly to herself. The station's artificial sun filtered through the small window of their shared quarters, casting a warm glow on everything. Alex stretched, feeling the soreness in his muscles from the previous day's training. He quickly got dressed, grabbed his combat gear, began preparing for another day of drills. Naira was sitting at the small desk in the corner of the room, absorbed in a book. It was a rare moment of quiet, a calm before the usual rush of the day. Alex felt the urge to ask her what she had learned the night before, but something held him back. Since the moment she had touched his gear, there had been a strange shift in their relationship. It was subtle, but Alex could feel it. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "Hey, Naira," he called, adjusting his gear. Naira didn't immediately respond. She was so focused on her reading that she barely heard him. Alex repeated her name, a little louder this time. "Oh, Alex," she said, looking up from her book. "Sorry I didn't hear you." "It's all right," he said, walking toward the door. "I'm heading out to training. Just wanted to check." "If you were okay," Naira smiled softly. "I'm fine, thank you. I've been reading more about Earth's history. It's fascinating." Alex nodded, not knowing much about what she was learning. Her interest in history was something he'd never really understood. To him, it seemed like a lot of reading without any real action. He preferred the adrenaline of his training, the feeling of being in control during the chaos of a mission. But he respected Naira's thirst for knowledge. "All right, I'll see you later," he said, opening the door. Just before he stepped out, Naira's voice called out to him again. "Alex, wait." He turned, raising an eyebrow. She hesitated for a moment, then stood up from the desk. "Would you like to teach me how to wear your gear?" Alex was surprised. He hadn't expected Naira to ask. He had joked about it the night before, but he never thought she would take it seriously. "I'm not sure you'd be comfortable in it," he said, chuckling. "It's heavy and the training isn't easy, but sure, I can show you." Walked over to the chair where Alex's combat gear was resting. She looked at it curiously, running her fingers over the surface again, just like she had the night before. This time, though, her expression seemed different. There was something more determined in her eyes, as if she was ready to try something new. "I want to understand it better," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I want to understand... you." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if he had heard her correctly. Naira nodded, her gaze meeting his. "I think I misunderstood you, Alex. I thought I understood what being a soldier meant. But it's more than just fighting, isn't it?" Alex felt a mix of emotions. He had never really spoken about his life as a soldier with Naira. He had kept that part of himself separate, as if it were a world she couldn't possibly understand. The idea of sharing that with her made him uneasy. But something in her eyes told him she wasn't just asking out of curiosity.
Oh?
There was a deeper question. In her tone, a desire to understand him that went beyond the surface level. He sighed, slowly walking over to his gear. "All right, I'll show you," he said, trying to sound casual, though he was far from it. "But you need to know that wearing this gear doesn't make you a soldier. It's just equipment. It's what you do with it that counts." Naira nodded, her expression serious. "I understand." With a deep breath, Alex began explaining each part of the combat suit to her. "This is the chest plate. It's made of a lightweight alloy, but it can stop most types of energy blasts. This helmet protects the head essential in battle. And these gloves," he added, picking up the gloves, "are designed for quick movements. You can activate different tools from them." As he talked, Naira listened intently, her eyes focused on every word he said. It was almost as if she was soaking in every detail, like this wasn't just a lesson about combat gear, but a chance to truly. Alex was surprised by how well the suit fit her. Naira was smaller and more delicate than he was, but the armor seemed to adapt to her form. She looked slightly awkward, but there was a certain grace in the way she carried herself, even in the heavy suit. "Yeah," Alex said, his voice softer than usual. "That's it," Naira turned slowly, testing the weight of the suit. "It's heavier than I expected," she said, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "But it's... protective. I feel safer with it on." Alex chuckled nervously. "That's the idea. It's meant to keep you alive when everything else is falling apart." She looked up at him, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding between them, now an understanding that hadn't been there before. It was more than just the suit or the gear. It was about trust. Alex was about to speak when Naira interrupted him. "Thank you, Alex," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. For showing me this? Her words caught him off guard. He wasn't used to being thanked for something like this. But there was something in her expression that made him feel like they had crossed an invisible line. Wean them, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. No problem, he said, his voice quieter than usual. You're welcome. As Naira slowly removed the gear and set it back on the chair, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship had shifted again. This time, it wasn't just about being roommates. It was about something more. Something he wasn't sure how to define, but something he felt deeply. For the first time, Alex wondered what it would be like if he truly let her in. What would it mean to trust her not just as a roommate, but as someone who could understand him on a deeper level? Naira had touched his combat gear, but in doing so, she had touched something deeper within him. The following days were different. The change was subtle, but Alex couldn't ignore it. Naira had always been kind to him, but there was something in the way she looked at him now. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. There was a quiet respect in her gaze, an understanding that had never been there before. Alex had noticed it the day after the gear lesson. Naira seemed more thoughtful, more present. She asked him more questions, not just about combat gear or Earth's history, but about his life, his experiences as a soldier. There was a soft intensity in her eyes when she looked at him, as if she were trying to piece together something about him that he wasn't quite ready to share at first. Alex thought it was just his imagination, a result of the awkwardness between them after the gear lesson, but it didn't feel like that. Naira was different. She was listening more intently, noticing small details about him, things she had never paid attention to before. One evening, as they sat in the shared living space, Alex was cleaning his combat gear when Naira approached him. She had been sitting quietly, reading a book about human history, but now she set it down and walked over to him. Alex, she began, her voice calm, but with an edge of curiosity. Been thinking? About what? He asked, glancing up from the gear he was cleaning. About your life as a soldier. I know you said it's just about survival, but it seems like it's more than that. It's about protecting others, right? Alex paused, unsure how to answer. He had never really talked about his job in such simple terms before. To him, being a soldier was about keeping people safe, yes, but it was also about dealing with the mess of war, the uncertainty, and the sacrifices. It wasn't an easy life to explain, especially to someone like Naira, who came from a peaceful society. It's not just about survival, Alex said slowly, his hands still working on the combat gear. It's about protecting the people you care about, even if it means risking your own life. Naira nodded thoughtfully. That's what I thought. It's about sacrifice. Alex felt a weight in his chest at her words. Yeah, sacrifice. But sometimes you don't really get to choose what you sacrifice. Naira seemed to consider this for a moment, then asked, Have you ever had to sacrifice something important to you? Alex stopped, his hand frozen over the armor. The question caught him off guard. He had made plenty of sacrifices during his time as a soldier, but some of them were things he didn't want to think about, things he wasn't ready to talk about. Alex started, but his voice trailed off. He didn't know how to explain the emptiness of losing a friend in battle, the guilt of surviving when others didn't. He didn't want to burden Naira with those memories. They were too painful, too personal. Naira, sensing his discomfort, didn't press further. Instead, she placed a hand on his shoulder, a soft touch that surprised him. I understand, she said gently. It's hard to talk about those things, but I think you're stronger than you realize, Alex. I've seen it. I've seen the strength it takes to be a soldier, to keep going even when things get tough. Alex looked up at her, his heart beating a little faster. Her words were simple, but they felt like a weight being lifted off his chest. He had never really allowed himself to believe that he was strong. The doubts, the fears, and the loss had always been too much. But Naira's words, they made him feel seen, like maybe there was something good in all the hardship he had endured. Thanks, Naira, he said quietly, giving her a small, appreciative smile. Naira smiled back. But there was something different about the way she looked at him now. There was no longer just curiosity in her eyes. It was deeper than that. She was looking at him as if she understood him in a way no one else did, as if she could see past the uniform, past the soldier, and into the person. Beneath, the next few days only made the shift more noticeable. Naira became more involved in Alex's daily routine. She asked about his training, his missions, and even started joining him for his evening workouts. It wasn't that she wanted to fight or be a soldier. Naira had made it clear that combat wasn't her path, but she wanted to understand what it felt like to experience a small part of his world. At first, Alex was unsure about having her join him. He wasn't used to sharing that side of himself with anyone, and having Naira there made him feel vulnerable. But soon, he began to appreciate her presence. She didn't push him to talk about things he wasn't ready to share, but she was always there quietly supporting him. One evening, after a particularly grueling workout, Naira sat beside him, watching him as he wiped the sweat from his brow. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," she said again, her voice soft. But sure, Alex didn't answer right away. He was tired, both physically and mentally, but Naira's words felt different this time. They weren't just words of encouragement. It felt like a recognition, a genuine acknowledgement of who he was and what he had been through. "I don't feel strong most of the time," Alex admitted, his voice low. Naira looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "But you keep going, don't you? Even when it's hard. That's strength, Alex." Alex met her gaze, feeling something stir in his chest. He had never thought of himself as particularly strong. But maybe Naira was right. Maybe the strength wasn't about never feeling weak, but about pushing through even when you did, for the first time in a long time. Alex allowed himself to believe that he was strong, even if it didn't always feel like it. As the evening wore on, Alex and Naira sat in comfortable silence. There were no more awkward questions, no more tension between them. There was only a quiet understanding, a bond that had grown like a wall between them and more like something that brought them together. One evening, after a particularly difficult training session, Alex returned to their quarters, feeling the familiar exhaustion settling in his bones. He had been running drills for hours, and his body ached in all the usual places. When he entered the room, Naira was already there, as usual, sitting in her corner with a book. But tonight, she looked up from her reading and smiled at him. Wasn't the usual friendly smile she gave him. There was something more in it now, something warmer. "Hey, you," she greeted him. "Tough day." Alex dropped his gear onto the chair and rubbed his neck. "Yeah, a little more intense than usual. I'm starting to feel it." Naira stood up and walked over to him. "You should rest. You've been pushing yourself a lot lately." Alex looked at her, surprised by how concerned she seemed. They had never really talked about what it was like for him being a soldier, but now, for some reason, she seemed to want to know. "I'll be fine," Alex replied, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "I've had worse days." Naira's smile faded slightly, and she placed her hand gently on his arm. "I don't think you're fine, Alex. I think you're carrying a lot on your own." The touch of her hand was small but meaningful, and it made Alex stop in his tracks. He had never really talked about the weight of being a soldier to anyone before, and now, with Naira, it felt different. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't judging him or asking for anything. She was just ... there, wanting to understand. "Don't know if I can explain it," Alex said, sitting down on the bed. "Sometimes it feels like the weight of everything is just too much. There are days when I'm not sure how I keep going." Naira sat down beside him, her presence calm and steady. "You don't have to explain it if you're not ready. I just want you to know you're not alone, Alex. I'm here." For a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. He was used to being alone in his thoughts, alone in his struggles. It had always been easier that way. But now, with Naira sitting beside him, offering her understanding without pushing him, it felt different. It felt like maybe he didn't have to carry it all by himself. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for all of this," Alex admitted. Quietly, "I've seen things, night, things I can't forget. Changes you. Sometimes I don't know if I can come back from it." Naira looked at him with an expression of deep understanding. "You don't have to carry it alone, Alex. I know you've been through a lot. I can't pretend to understand everything. But I want to be here for you, however I can. Just as you've been here for me." Alex turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers for the first time in what felt like a long while. There was something about the way she looked at him, something that made him feel less alone. She had always been kind, always eager to learn about humans, but this was different. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was something deeper, something that Alex hadn't realized he needed until now. "You don't have to do that," Alex said softly. "You don't owe me anything." "I don't owe you anything," Naira replied. "But I want to be here. I want to understand. And maybe that's enough." The words were simple, but they felt like a weight lifting off Alex's shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe it was enough. Maybe it didn't have to be all about the missions, the battles, the fear. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for something else, something that didn't involve the endless cycle of fighting. They sat in silence for a while, quiet hum of the station filling the space around them. Alex wasn't sure what to say next, but for once, he didn't feel the need to fill the silence. Naira's presence was enough. After a few moments, Naira spoke again. "Alex, can I ask you something?" "Sure," Alex replied, turning toward her. Naira hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "What's the hardest part about being a soldier? I mean, it's not just the battles, is it?" Alex thought for a moment, the question hitting him harder than he expected. The hardest part. It wasn't the fights or the missions. Those things were hard, yes, but the real struggle lay somewhere else. "The hardest part is the waiting," Alex said finally. "The waiting for something to happen, the not knowing. And then, when it's all over, there's no way to go back. You can't undo the things you've seen, the things you've done." Naira nodded, listening carefully. "That sounds ... hard. Really hard." "It is," Alex admitted. "But it's what we do. It's why we keep going." Naira smiled gently. "And it's why I admire you, Alex. I don't know anyone else who could keep going like you do." Alex felt his heart soften at her words. He wasn't used to being admired for his job, especially not for the parts of it that weighed him down. But there was something in Naira's tone that made him believe she meant it. "Thank you, Naira," Alex said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "That means more than you know." Naira didn't reply at first, but there was a look in her eyes that told Alex everything he needed to know. There was a quiet bond between them now, one that hadn't existed before. It wasn't just about the combat gear or the training. It was about understanding, about being there for each other in ways that went beyond words. As they sat together in the silence, Alex realized something he hadn't allowed himself to think about before. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry the weight alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The days following their conversation had brought an unexpected calm. Alex still carried the weight of his work, but with Naira's support, it felt a little lighter. She had become more than just a roommate. She was someone he could talk to, someone who understood him without asking too many questions. There was a quiet comfort in their daily routine, a rhythm that felt good. The awkwardness that had once filled their space was gone, replaced by something more genuine. One afternoon, after a long training session, Alex returned to their quarters to find Naira sitting by the window, looking out at the stars. The light from the station's artificial sun bathed the room in a soft glow, but there was a quiet stillness in the air. Naira had always been a peaceful person, but today there was something different about her. She seemed distant, lost in thought. Alex set down his gear and walked over to her, his footsteps soft against the floor. "Hey, Naira," he said gently. "What's on your mind?" Naira turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night," she replied, her voice calm, but with a hint of uncertainty. "About the hardest part of being a soldier, the waiting, the not knowing." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You've been thinking about that?" Naira nodded slowly. "I don't think I fully understood what you meant at first, but now I think I do. I've been trying to imagine what it's like, to live in that constant state of uncertainty, to never really know what comes next." Alex sat down beside her, looking out at the stars with her. "It's strange," he said quietly. "You spend so much time preparing for the worst, but when it comes, you never know if you'll be ready. Sometimes it feels like you're always waiting for the next battle, the next mission. Used about the missions. It's about everything you've seen, everything you've lost. Alex felt a wave of emotion rise in his chest. He had always kept those feelings buried, hidden beneath the armor of his job. But with Naira sitting beside him, so close and understanding, felt like he could finally let them surface. "I've lost people," Alex said, his voice rough. "Friends, people I trusted. It's the hardest part. You don't get to choose who you lose. And when they're gone, you're left with the guilt. The what-ifs." Naira reached out, placing her hand on his arm. "I can't pretend to understand of her. Allowed himself to rely on anyone before. He had always believed that he had to carry the burden by himself. But now, with Naira's steady presence beside him, he felt something he hadn't in a long time, a sense of peace. Of being understood. "You're the only one who's ever said that," Alex whispered. "That I'm not alone," Naira gave him. A small smile. "You don't have to be alone, Alex. Not anymore." For the first time in a long time, Alex felt like maybe he didn't have to carry the weight of the universe on his shoulders. Maybe there was someone he could trust. Someone who wouldn't just see him as a soldier, but as a person. As the night stretched on, they sat together in silence, the hum of the station filling the quiet. Alex felt the weight of the day's training fade away, replaced by the warmth. Of Naira's presence, he didn't need to speak. They didn't need words to communicate anymore. There was a connection between them that went deeper than just the surface. It was built on trust, on shared understanding, and on the simple act of being there for each other. The next day, Alex and Naira found themselves spending more time together. Naira had started to join Alex for his workouts, not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted to understand the physical side of his life. She asked questions about the different exercises he did, and Alex found himself teaching her in a way he never had before. Felt natural, easy even. Naira wasn't trying to be a soldier. She was just trying to understand what it felt like, what it meant to live the way Alex did. One afternoon, as they finished a sparring session, Naira wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled at him. "I don't think I'll ever be as strong as you," she said, laughing lightly. Alex shook his head. "It's not about being strong. It's about pushing through even when you're not." Naira looked at him with a new respect in her eyes. "I think I'm starting to understand that," she said quietly. "You keep going, no matter what. That's what makes you strong." Alex paused, looking at her with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "You know, I never thought about it that way," Naira smiled. "That's because you've been too focused on the battles. But the real strength comes from within, doesn't it?" Alex felt his heart swell with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could move past the weight of his past. That maybe he could find a way to heal, not by fighting, but by trusting those around him. As the days went by, Alex and Naira's bond grew stronger. They continued to train together, share stories, and slowly, Alex began to let down the walls he had built around himself. It wasn't easy. Old habits were hard to break. But with Naira by his side, he began to believe that maybe there was more to life than just surviving. Maybe, just maybe, could find peace. Life on the space station had taken on a new rhythm for Alex and Naira. The days felt less heavy. It's filled with moments of understanding and mutual respect. Their shared time together was no longer just about being roommates. It was about supporting each other in a way neither of them had expected. Alex had always been used to handling everything on his own, but now, with Naira's quiet presence beside him, he realized that maybe it was okay to let someone in. One morning, after a long week of training, the station's alarm rang out suddenly. Piercing through the calm, Alex's heart raced as he quickly stood up, his soldier instincts kicking in. It was an emergency signal, one that hadn't been triggered in months. "Alex, what's happening?" Naira asked, her voice tense as she looked up from the console. The calmness she usually carried was replaced with worry. "I don't know," Alex said, already moving toward the door. "But I need to get to the command center. Stay here, I'll check it out." Naira stood up quickly, following him toward the door. "No, I'm coming with you. You don't have to face this alone." Alex stopped in his tracks, surprised by her sudden determination. "Naira, it's dangerous. You've never been in a situation like this. It's not something I can explain." "I know what it's like to feel like you're all alone in something," Naira said firmly. "And I don't want you to go through it by yourself. I want to help." For a moment, Alex hesitated. He knew the risks, he had seen the dangers of the station firsthand, but Naira wasn't backing down. There was something in her eyes that told him she was ready to stand by him, no matter the danger. "All right," Alex said, nodding. "But stay close and listen to what I say. This isn't going to be like anything you've seen before." Naira nodded, her gaze steady. Alex led the way as they made their way to the command center, his mind racing with possibilities. He didn't know what kind of threat they were facing, but he had to prepare for the worst. When they arrived at the command center, the atmosphere was tense. The officers were all rius. The crew moved into action. Naira stayed close to Alex, her expression calm despite the growing tension around them. She had always been curious about human defense strategies, but now, as she watched Alex direct the team, she saw the full extent of his strength. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a leader. Alex glanced at Naira, noticing how steady she was, even in the face of danger. "You're doing great," he said, his voice low. Naira smiled slightly, but it wasn't a joke. "I'm just here to help. We're in this together, right?" Alex gave a small nod, feeling a warmth spread through him. It wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was about the trust they had built over the past few weeks. Naira wasn't just someone he lived with. She had become someone he could count on. He realized for the first time that it wasn't just his mission to complete. It was theirs. As the countdown began to launch the station's defensive measures, the crew watched closely. The seconds ticked by, and the tension was palpable. Alex was standing beside Naira, preparing for whatever threat was coming. It wasn't just the danger he had to focus on, it was the people around him, those he was responsible for. "What's our plan if they're hostile?" Naira asked, her voice steady, but with a hint of concern. "We fight if we have to," Alex replied. "But we also have to make sure we're prepared for anything. Stay sharp." Naira's gaze shifted toward the control panels, and she instinctively reached for the nearby weapons console. What if they're not attacking but asking for help? I mean, that distress signal could mean something else. Alex turned to her, surprised by the question. He hadn't considered that possibility. It's always possible. But we can't take any chances. If it's an ambush, we'll need to be ready. Naira nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. But Alex saw the thoughtfulness in her eyes. She was thinking beyond the immediate crisis. She wasn't just reacting. She was processing, considering every angle. It reminded him again of how much she had grown since they first met. She wasn't just his roommate anymore. She was someone who saw the bigger picture, who could make decisions in the heat of the moment. A loud beep from the console interrupted their thoughts. The screen flashed with data, indicating an incoming signal. It was a communication from the unknown source. Alex exchanged a look with Naira before activating the channel. The screen flickered for a moment, and then a voice came through, distorted but clear enough to understand. "This is Captain Lyra of the Rena. We're requesting assistance. Are under attack by an unknown enemy force. Please, we need help." The message was brief, but it was enough to make Alex's heart race. He turned to Naira, who was already looking at him, her expression serious. "We're not alone in this," Naira said softly. "We need to help them." Alex nodded, the weight of the decision settling in. They weren't just dealing with a potential threat to the station anymore. They were facing a crisis that could affect many more lives, and they had a choice to make. "We're going to help them," Alex said firmly. "Prepare the crew. We're heading out." The crew moved quickly after Alex's order. They had their mission help the distressed ship and find out who or what was attacking them. The station's defensive systems were in place, and the team was ready for action. Alex stood at the command console, his mind racing as the seconds passed. Naira stood beside him, her calm presence a comfort in the chaos. "We need to get to the Rena as soon as possible," Lex said, turning to the crew. "Prepare the shuttle. All of you, stay focused. If this is a trap, we'll need to stay sharp." The crew members nodded and immediately began their tasks. Naira, though not a soldier, had become invaluable in these moments. She wasn't just standing by, she was helping. She moved swiftly between the consoles, assisting with communications and organizing data. "Naira, I need you on the scanners," Alex said, his voice steady. "We'll need eyes on that ship the moment we arrive. Can you handle that?" Gave him a quick nod, her face focused and determined. "I've got it." Alex couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The Naira who had arrived at the station months ago was not the same one standing beside him now. She had learned so much in such a short time, not just about the human way of life, but about survival and loyalty. He knew now that he could trust her with his life, just as he trusted his fellow soldiers. The shuttle was prepped and ready within minutes. Alex and Naira boarded, along with a small team of officers. The journey to the Rena was tense, with every member of the crew aware that they were headed into an unknown situation. As the shuttle cruised through space, Alex kept a sharp eye on the scanners, and Naira was focused on her task. "We'll be within range in 10 minutes, Naira called out, her voice calm and precise, scanning for any signs of the enemy ship. Alex nodded. "Good. Let's be ready for anything." The shuttle continued to approach the coordinates of the Rena, and Alex could see the ship on his console. It was heavily damaged, burn marks on the outer hull, and parts of the ship were barely holding together. It was clear that the crew of the Rena had been through hell. "We're almost there," Alex said, his voice tighter now. "Prepare for docking. Keep all weapon systems ready." Naira looked up from her scanner, getting a signal from the Rena's command center. "It's weak, but it's there." "Put it through," Alex said. The voice that came through the speakers was faint, crackling with static. "This is Captain Lyra, of the Rena. Thank you for responding to our distress call. We've been under attack for hours, and we can't hold out much longer. We need your help." Alex leaned closer to the console. "What kind of attack are you facing? Who's the enemy?" "We don't know," Captain Lyra replied. "The attackers came out of nowhere. They've been using advanced weapons, and our shields are barely holding up. We're stranded and unable to escape." Alex turned to Naira. "We need to get aboard. Keep your eyes on the scanners. If there's anything suspicious, tell me immediately." Nada nodded, her eyes scanning. "The readings on the screen?" "Understood." The shuttle docked with the Rena, and Alex led the team inside. The airlock hissed as they entered the ship, the low hum of the damaged systems barely audible in the background. The crew of the Rena was scattered, looking tired and worn. Some were injured, others were just exhausted from the fight. "Captain Lyra," Alex called out. A tall woman in a worn uniform stepped forward, her expression grim but relieved. "You're here. Thank you. I wasn't sure anyone was coming." "We've got your back," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's the situation?" Captain Lyra gestured for them to follow. "We've been under attack by an unknown force for several hours. They're using weapons we've never seen before, energy blasts that go straight through our shields. We've lost power to most of our systems." Alex exchanged a look with his team. It wasn't like any enemy force he had encountered before. He had seen plenty of advanced weaponry in his time as a soldier. But this was different. "We'll take a look at your weapon systems and see if we can help," Alex said. "Naira, stay here and keep an eye on the situation. If anything changes, alert us." Naira gave a nod and immediately went to a nearby console to monitor the situation. The rest of the team followed Captain Lyra to the ship's central command room, where a few engineers were attempting to fix the damage. Alex moved quickly, assessing the systems, looking for any weaknesses or solutions. But the damage was extensive, and time was running out. "This isn't just an attack," Alex said, his voice low. "This is an invasion. They're trying to cripple the ship, not just disable it." Captain Lyra's face hardened. "That's what we thought, but we don't know who they are. They're not on any of our records." Alex turned to one of his team members. "You need to get the ships. Shields back online. Can you do that?" The officer nodded. "We'll try, but it'll take time. The damage is too severe." Alex turned to Captain Lyra. "Do you have any idea who might be behind this? Any enemies you've made recently?" Lyra looked away for a moment before meeting his gaze. No one. We've always been a peaceful crew. We've made enemies. With no one but these attackers. ... She paused, a frown crossing her face. They seemed to know exactly where to strike. Alex's mind raced as he considered the possibilities. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this attack than just random violence. This was planned, but by whom? Suddenly, Naira's voice came through their coms. Alex, you need to get back here. I'm picking up something on the scanners. It's strange, almost like a signal. But it's not like anything we've seen before. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He turned quickly to Captain Lyra. Stay here. I'm going back to the shuttle. Naira's found something. As he rushed back to the shuttle, his mind was spinning. What was Naira picking up? Was it a sign of more enemies? Or something else entirely?